We're going to remove an old school GP100 Jetsurf engine. Hey guys, Rod here, Jetboard Australia. Welcome back to the channel. Been a little while since we put a video up. It's been Christmas and the busy time of the year. So anyway, we've got a great little GP100 here. It's got a couple of issues with the engine, so we're going to pull the engine out. We're going to do a little video on pulling the engine out on this one, and also we're going to do a complete recondition on it. So this particular video is all about let's get the engine out and showing you how to get this old school style engine out of the board and back together all in one piece. And then we'll have a separate video where we do the engine itself. So anyway, hang on to your hats and we'll get stuck into it. Okay guys, let's get started on this. So first thing you'll notice, obviously with the older engines and fuel tank setups, is the fuel tank and breather system is different. And these older school engines don't have the engine cradles. They have just little mounts below the engine. But listen, if you're looking for a removal and replacement of a late model engine, I'll put a link in the description below and you can check that out as well. But anyway, this is the older school stuff. These engines ran up to about 2017 and then they went to the bigger, longer cradle, and then around 2019 we went to fuel injection. So that gives you a bit of an idea and guide. So anyway, first things first, easiest way to get these tanks out is obviously remove the fuel tank breather. The fuel tank breather in these ones is actually attached to the front of the tank. The newer models is actually, there's a valve in the back, and you'll see that in one of the other videos there. And then of course remove the fuel line. You've got your Velcro strap there, which is a little worse for wear, but anyway. And then with all these tanks, to get it around the engine hood bracket there, you need to lift the tank up and sort of S it out to get it out. As you can see, the cavity there to get around that bracket. So easy as that, fuel tank's out. So this is where the fun begins. So with these old school engines, unlike the new ones, we need to undo the couplings and slide the couplings out of the way, because the engines in these come directly up, where the newer model engines, the way the cradle is set up, you can unbolt at either end and the engine can slide forward. So the first thing I like to do is get that coupling undone. So we'll get that started there. So first things first, is we'll undo the little clamp. Just on the back there. So these are in two pieces, so that's got a clamp. It sits up against the coupling there, and then of course we'll undo the coupling itself, which should be a little tighter. Just undo that, and then we turn it round to there. So what we're doing here with the screwdriver, it looks a bit rough, but it's not. We're basically spreading that coupling so it'll slide on the shaft, and you can see it's starting to do that. See, and off she comes there, and then we just pop that screwdriver back out again. Very easy. So what you'll also see in here, in under there, is your I guess your buffers or your little push drive for your drive shaft, and they sit in there. So when you pull the engine out, we'll inspect them, but we'll pull it off later and have a better look at that. So all right, so we'll get the wiring and everything out of the way first, so we'll get started with that. So this one is missing a little spring that holds the plug cap on, so someone's put a cable tie on it, which is not a bad idea, but we'll replace it with a spring, and I'll show you what that's all about later. We'll disconnect. This is the starter motor plug here, and again with all these Volkswagen style plugs, you simply get your finger hooked under there. And they're always tight. Sometimes you've actually got to push them in a little bit. Get your finger in there. Oh yeah, that one's really tight. Okay, we might have to go plan B on that. If they're really tight, we can get a screwdriver in behind them, but be very careful you don't break the tag off. That can happen, so I'll just be careful. There you go, boom, that got him. So I just give it a little flick with the screwdriver, and that released it, and out she came. That's cool, and the one below this here is for your timing sensor. Same again, that was a little bit more cooperative. And then we'll get that Allen key off there. The right size, yep. Just pop that out. I always like to put the little screws back into there, so it's there for when you do it next time. And we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that off. And then we've got to take this coupling off here as well. So, pop that o One little tip when you're putting these couplings back on and you've got longer screws like this one, make sure they don't touch the gears in there. That can be a bit catastrophic if you screw these screws in and they touch the gears underneath, and as soon as I whip this cover off, you'll see it'll be quite apparent on how that can be a problem. Anyway, we'll go through that when we do a reassemble anyway, but just a tip while we're here. That screwed away, so you can pull that off. So you can just imagine, in this case it's good, it's going to clear, but if the screw's too long, they can get tangled up in that gear. So just a tip from that one. So that's all out of the way. There's that. We've got one more cable tie down here. So that wire there is for your bilge pump. That can just slip out of the way for the time being. Onto the exhaust, that'll just pull off. And then this one's your cooling line from the jet pump. So it's got, I guess, a little snap ring type fitting on that. So you just pull the ring backwards and slide the tube out. So just so you can see how it works, you slide it in. You've got this little ring arrangement just sort of here, if you can see that in the camera, and you push that backwards like that. You do it with two fingers, and then the tube just pops out. Good as that. Same deal here for the telltale. So this tube runs from here to your telltale, and you push that back and pull it out so they're out of the way, which is great. All right, then from there, I reckon we get some engine mounts undone. So these are 8mm. Pop that in there. Yeah, just a little 8mm bolt like that. One down here. Now this one down here has a little earth wire on it. I'll be frank, I'm not sure what the earth wire is all about, but there's an earth wire on it. The newer models don't have it, but it is on these early ones, so we'll leave it there. It's obviously there for a reason. There you go with your earth lead. And now here's the fun one. So there's an engine mount bolt underneath that exhaust port. So I use a very small 8mm ratchet spanner and try and tuck under there. So I'm going to tackle it from the other direction. So I'm just going to swing this around. There she comes. Now we've got that loose. Now that bolt there doesn't have to come all the way out. The Jetsurf was smart enough to put in the engine cradle or in the engine bracket there a slot, so it simply lifts out. So all the other three are out. That one just slides up and then boom, slides off the exhaust port, and you can see there it has a little slot in it, which is perfect. So the next thing to do, we'll roll the engine on its side here. I'll tell you what we will do to make life easier. We'll whip that spark plug out now. That'll give us a little bit more room to get the engine out. It's a bit of a tight squeeze in there, so it's good. And you always check the spark plug. That one's relatively new. That's nice. But we will put a new one in it. You don't rebuild an engine without putting a new spark plug in it. That's silly business. Oh, one other thing that is a bit of a worry that gets in your way is this tube down here, which is a vent tube. It works the bilge pump. It comes off there. See, it's got a nipple on the bottom of the crank. That operates this valve here. And the valve is designed so if you get the engine full of water and it's flooded, you can crack that valve and it drains the crankcases. It's an old jet ski idea. They've deleted it from the newer models. Which is great because it makes the engine easier coming in and out. And to be honest with you, if you tip the board with a cylinder downhill, all the water runs out anyway, so it's not really necessary. The other thing I have noticed while I was in here, this is your secondary bilge pump. Again, they have done away with this in the newer models, thank God, because again, they weren't necessary. So the idea with this is The crankcase pulse, as you know, the piston moving up and down creates a pulse in the crankcase, is plumbed into this, well, it's very much like a fuel pump. They use it as a water pump here. They plumb it into this. There's a diaphragm in there with 2 one-way valves. So the idea is the diaphragm's pumping the whole time the engine's running, and it pumps the water out through the second telltale. That's why you'll see 2 on these older ones, where there's only 1 on the new one. The new ones only have an electric one. These have electric and also a vacuum style or pulse pump style bilge pump as well. Again, deleted the new models. They're not super necessary. So that's cool. All right, so that's out of the way, and you've got to remember when you put that back in, make sure you put that tube on, because the engine will run badly because it'll draw in through there. So the next step is whip it around this side, and you can see we have the throttle cable which we need to deal with. So we'll get that out of the way. Just undo this clamp. The throttle cable at that end. So the next thing we do is we do this little ball and socket here. So I'll get in there with the long nose pliers and just give it a squeeze and it pops off. And then out she comes. And there it is. Engine's out. So we'll get it on the bench and start tearing it down. Okay, we've cleaned that engine bay out, got rid of all the sand and muck in there. We've had a look at this coupling drive. The coupling rubbers are in good condition, so we'll reuse those. Slide that back on there. So anyway, we'll pop this engine on. First thing we're going to do is going to hook up this hose. It's a bit of a difficult thing to get to at times, so we'll get that in first. So in we go with the engine. Tight, you don't want that to come off. It's not ideal if it pops off. Obviously, it'll create a massive air leak in the crankcases, and the board will run really bad, really bad. So we'll sit that back down, somewhat in place there. Because what we're going to do next is get the throttle cable in place. So that comes around. Sit that engine up there. So the throttle cable snakes its way around gears on the board and that there, so we'll get this, hook that up in through there, not through the gear. So if you're doing it before you bolt the engine in, it saves a lot of mucking around. You'll notice too, there's 2 washers on the bottom of the crank there that hold the cable from getting tangled up in the starter gear or something, which would always be bad. Cables and gears, yeah, not so good. So what I'm going to do, pop this on to the carburetor mount. Just put it back there. Let's pop it on, and then we can pull the cable back through. You can see how the cable is in through under that tube, under the 2 washers there, above the outlet for the cylinder, and then into the cylinder itself there. Just let that sit there. Now, while we're doing this up, we can actually set the throttle lever tension. So the cable's tight, so it's very loose there now, so the cable's got to come along there. There, as you can see, it's got a bit of slop in it. You want to make sure it's got full throttle. That's where it's been sitting because it doesn't want to move too much. Just test it. So a little bit of free play, that's perfect, and then boom, you've got full throttle. That's perfect, and the operation is nice and smooth. You'll see that red tape on there. That's from the last time I lubricated that cable. My lubricator, you have to build up the end of the cable to make it seal properly and lube. So the other thing is, don't do them up too tight. If you do them up too tight, see, it's actually pinched the cable. It's jammed. Watch this. As I undo this, boom, out she comes. So make sure you don't go tight. There you go, perfect. That was a great example. Alright, cool. So we can put that engine back in its place down there. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a new exhaust gland in. So these are the rubbers that seal the exhaust. The newer models have O-rings, which are a much better system. These earlier boards tended to flog these out and they get contaminated with oil. So we always put a new one in every time we have the engine out. Now, we remember our little engine mount at the bottom here. It was just unscrewed enough so we can put it in the slot. So what we're going to do, get a little bit of spray, make this easy to go in. And then we're going to lift the exhaust and that up. So the plug is there. And boom, in she goes. So that's back in place. All the engine mounts are sitting in position. 3 engine mount bolts. Basically, move the engine around to get it into position. Okay, start the thread. That's that one. You can feel the hole on the thread as you move it around. Just get it started. One in the rear here. And this one's the last one to do because it's the most difficult. So the other one's in place, it'll help align this one. She goes. Alright, so they're all in loose, but before we do anything, we're going to put the coupling in. So basically we slide that on, push it home, and what that does, that helps align the engine. You know, you got the exhaust, which is floating, you got the engine mounts, but the shaft is the important part to align it up. So that slider slid in very nicely there, and then we'll go around here and we'll tighten that. Also tighten the collar, and we all obviously have the 2 bolts opposed. That helps balance it. There's not much in that, but to help it be smooth, we'll do it that way. Nice and tight. And a little retainer. Nice and tight as well. There's a spare with the back. So. Alright, we can do those engine mounts up now. Just do them up. It's tightening. Pleased that Jetsurf moved their engine mount positions from this style. So yeah, a bit of a test. Just putting some load on the bolt there with my finger because it's quite loose, and the ratchet doesn't want to ratchet. It just wants to slip. So using my finger to put some tension on it there. Starting to get tight now, I won't need my finger anymore. It's got him. Okay, let's get these cooling lines on. That's the most important. Obviously, if you've got a brand new engine and you put the cooling lines in, that'll be a nuclear meltdown and a total fail. So we'll make sure that locks in properly there. That doesn't appear to be pulling out. So they've got these quick release couplings, so it pushes in, and as long as you can't pull it out without pushing the locking ring in, that's great. The tube onto the cylinder there. That, and then tube on here, telltale. Lined up with that. It's not coming out. And we'll get a little cable tie to whack on that. A couple of cable ties on there. Okay, put this coupling cover on, start doing the wiring. Sit something like that. Sender, rack it on, timing sensor in the cover. Okay, do some wiring. So, timing sensor. The earth wire on. Here's the breather. Tank goes down there. Looking for the starter motor plug. Stick it through that. Bit of trouble with this one where you undid it. She's tight. As it goes. Nice click. There. Earth lead on there. Okay, we'll put the starter motor earth lead on here. Fiddly. That's nice. Sit down in there out of the way. Okay, so important thing, Mr. Spark Plug, we better put him in. Don't run too flash without a spark plug, I'm afraid. Okay, not sure if you can see it from there, but that little spring I just put on there before, you flip that on the other side of the spark plug cap. So you bang that on. Then get the spring, flip it over the end of the spark plug cap. That's brand new, so it's nice and tight and stiff. You know the spark plug cap's on properly, it's right up against the shoulder there, so that's perfect. Alright, I think all we need now is a fuel tank. We're getting close. So the fuel tank, we'll make sure we get the back strap so we don't lose it. If you put the tank in without the back strap in your hand, it gets lost. Let's snake this way now there. Strap it in. Breathe up. Snip it on there. Tuck it down there under the lid. Fuel line. Like that. That's lovely. All right, let's fire this baby up. So we'll get some fuel in it. And I'll get my special groovy fuel can. There we go. everything's hooked up, ready to go. A little trick I'll show you now. If you've got one of the older boards, you'll get one of these syringes with it. It's originally to oil the one-way bearing, the clutch. And they make great little helpers to get things started. So obviously the fuel system was completely empty. So what I do is I draw a bit of fuel out of the fuel tank and then put it straight down into the carburetor. And it helps us start. And we'll probably have to do that twice, maybe even 3 times to get all the fuel through. But that makes it a lot easier to start without priming the fuel through. So let's turn on the ICU. Yep, red light there. You can see the light down on the ICU there. It's flashing. Put it in and see how we go. Boom! She lives. Nice. Alright, we'll have to do this a couple of times, as I said, just to get the fuel to draw through. But it does live. Now, don't put too much fuel in it. That's more than enough. If you put too much in it, it actually floods. And you can see there how it sort of tried to start and then didn't. That's actually too much fuel in it. So generally I use a little bit less than I should say. But because this has got no fuel at all, we'll give it a bit more. So. Alright, she runs. Obviously we've got to set the idle speed and do a little tuning. So we'll whip that outside and get that sorted. But yeah, woohoo, she runs. Good stuff. Alright, we've got it outside so we can run some water on it. I've just set the carburetor settings. It's probably difficult to see from there, but the top setting as a standard should be 1 3/4 turns, and the low speed should be 1 1/4 turns. So I'll set them to factory settings. We will alter them a little bit as we go. The idle speed was way too high, so we're going to get in here and knock that back a little bit. A special little spanner. Crack the lock nut on there. That. I'm sure we'll have to adjust that a little more. Alright, so we'll fire it up again. And I've got the hose hooked up to the back, so once I fire it, I can get some water through it, but I might get the idle set first. So we'll turn on the ICU again. Listen to the bilge pump, look for the red light, and hopefully she should just fire straight up again. Really good, so I'm going to lock that idle screw off at that. Okay, so we've got us all back together. She's all running and happy days again now, so we'll get this back to the customer. But thanks for watching again, and listen, please subscribe to my site. Motivates me to do more and more of these videos. I know a lot of people who have been watching them and enjoying them and getting a lot of value out of them. So anyway, if you can subscribe, help me out with that one, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again.